The fist came fast and reckless, cutting through the air like a blunt hammer swung without thought. It crashed against the face of the soldier standing in silence beside the tomb. A strike meant to humiliate, to test the unshakable poise of a man who had sworn to remain still against every provocation. Gasps erupted from the crowd, not in defense, but in disbelief. A boyish voice from somewhere in the back cracked with nervous laughter, and then it died just as quickly, smothered by the heavy silence that returned to the sacred ground. The guard did not flinch. His body, clothed in immaculate uniform, remained still rigid, a living statue carved from discipline and sacrifice. The only movement was the ripple of his jaw as the punch landed, but he did not stagger, did not raise his hands, did not blink. His eyes remained locked on the invisible line he was sworn to hold. His silence was louder than any rebuke, heavier than any counterstrike. And in that silence, the boy who had thrown the punch, the swaggering bully with laughter behind his teeth, felt his moment of triumph slip from his grasp. For something unseen had shifted, something ancient and immovable that did not bend to disrespect. The man in uniform was no ordinary sentinel. Beneath that stillness lay years of service, nights spent under foreign skies, mornings when the weight of grief threatened to collapse him. His scars were not only hidden under cloth and skin, but etched into memory, each one a name carved on the endless rows of headstones surrounding him. Once, long before he stood at this tomb, he had crouched in desert dust, hands trembling as he pressed bandages against a friend's wound that would not close. The smell of iron and smoke had filled his lungs, and the cries of distant gunfire had mingled with the gurgled breath of the man beside him. He had whispered words of hope. He did not believe himself, because what else could one do in the final minutes of a brother's life? And when that final breath left, the silence that followed was nearly identical to the silence here now, a silence that crushed the chest, that demanded reverence, that could swallow even the laughter of fools. He had returned home with medals, but they lay untouched in drawers, collecting dust, because no metal could weigh as much as the absence of those who never returned. So he volunteered for this duty, the guard of the tomb. Not because it was glamorous, not because anyone cheered for him, but because it was the closest thing to keeping vigil over his brothers. Here, every second of stillness was a vow renewed. Every breath drawn in silence was a prayer for the ones whose breaths had ended too soon. And so when the bully's fist cracked against his face, he did not answer it, because the duty was not about himself. It was about the nameless soldier, the unknown warrior, the countless fallen who could no longer rise to meet insult or injury. He was their shield, their stand-in, their silent voice. To break composure would be to make it about him, and not about them. The crowd shifted uneasily, murmurs like winds stirring restless branches. Some looked away, uncomfortable, ashamed. Others froze, caught in the magnetic pull of spectacle. No one stepped forward to intervene. The boy, emboldened by the silence, puffed his chest and laughed again, louder this time, mocking the stillness as cowardice. He taunted, called him a statue, claimed the uniform was just a costume. And still the guard did not move. But unseen by the boy, something else had been set in motion. A ripple in the fabric of duty that did not come from the guard himself, but from those who watched. At the edges of the crowd other men stood, older, quiet, dressed in plain clothes that revealed nothing of who they had once been. They had come, as they often did, not to draw attention, but to pay silent respect. Veterans, fathers, widows, sons, who carried folded flags back home from ceremonies no one wanted to attend. They saw the punch not just as an insult to one man, but as an assault against all who had sacrificed, against the very memory of the fallen. One of them stepped forward, not rushing, not shouting. His gait was steady, deliberate. His eyes were steady pools that had seen too much war to be shaken by teenage arrogance. He stopped beside the bully, who turned, startled, realizing too late that he was not mocking a statue, but desecrating a shrine watched by guardians living and dead. There was no warning. The veteran's hand shot forward with precision, not wild anger, but practiced efficiency born from years of combat training. The open palm struck upward, sharp as a blade, connecting with the bully's jaw. Teeth rattled free, the laughter broken mid-breath. The boy stumbled backward, hands clutching his mouth as blood filled his palms. Gasps surged through the crowd again, but this time no one laughed. The silence that followed was different, thicker, charged with awe and shame. The guard remained still, unshaken, eyes forward as though none of it had happened. He had not broken his vow. He had not raised his hand. The justice delivered had not come from him, but from the invisible army that stood behind him. The living who remembered, the dead who demanded respect, and the strangers in the crowd who now realized what they had witnessed was not just a scuffle, but a lesson. The veteran who had struck the blow did not speak. He did not gloat. He only stood for a moment, his chest rising and falling, before stepping back into the crowd as though nothing had happened. The bully crumpled on the ground, the arrogance washed from him, the silence of the place pressing down on him like a weight he could not bear. And then something remarkable happened. One by one, members of the crowd straightened, their shoulders pulled back, their gazes fixed on the sentinel who had taken the punch without moving. Some placed hands over their hearts, some lowered their heads. A mother hushed her child. A father whispered words of explanation, and slowly the entire space transformed from a scene of mockery to one of reverence. The guard remained motionless, but within him something stirred, a quiet affirmation that his brothers had not been forgotten, that dignity could still win against cruelty, that silence could be stronger than fists. A single sentence seemed to hang in the air, unspoken but alive. The silence of honor is louder than the noise of disrespect. Later, when the boy was led away, ashamed and broken of his bravado, the story would spread. Some would tell it as a tale of violence met with violence, but those who had been there knew better. It was not the teeth flying that mattered. It was the silence that endured. It was the guard's refusal to break his vow, the crowd's awakening to the weight of what they had witnessed, and the unseen hand of justice that appeared not in rage but in reverence. That day, more than one person left with a lesson carved into their chest. Respect is not optional where sacrifice has been made. And though the guard himself never spoke a word, never reacted, never claimed victory, his presence alone had said enough. His silence was not weakness but strength. His stillness was not cowardice, but unshakable courage. And his unbroken vow was a reminder that sometimes the most powerful stand one can take is to remain unshaken, no matter what storm comes crashing down. As the sun lowered behind the marble tomb, its light washed the guard in gold, turning his silhouette into something almost timeless. Those who passed by carried the image with them, whispering later to friends and loved ones of the day. They saw silence defeat arrogance, of the day a punch thrown at a man of honor, returned instead to destroy the pride of the one who dared to throw it. And though the crowd eventually dispersed, though footsteps faded, though chatter resumed, the lesson lingered like the echo of a drumbeat carried across distance. The fallen are not forgotten, and those who guard their memory will never stand alone. Even in silence, to all who listen, let it be remembered. Dignity needs no words, honor needs no defense, and sometimes the quietest figures in the crowd carry the loudest truths. And now, to those watching from far and near, the question lingers. Where are you listening from? What does respect mean to you? Share your thoughts, your place, your heart. And if this story moved you, stay with us, for there are more stories waiting. Stories of silent heroes, unshakable dignity, and the unseen battles that shape the world around us.